webinar this morning. But since those of you are here, I think it would probably be best if we go ahead and get started. And as Christina was just mentioning, and Will as well, the primary way that we're going to try and work the webinar today and in the future is because there can be sometimes lots of background noise, that we may kind of go back and forth between muting folks when there's presentations that are going on, and then unmuting when there's opportunities for questions and that kind of thing. But if in the meantime you all have questions or things come up, just please note that on your screen you should have a similar icon to, I think, what you see from me displaying right now. So you can raise your hand. Although I don't see the hand-raising feature.
No, they can't see.
On your control panel, then, you will see a hand that you can raise if you want to ask a question, and then you'll also see a place where you can chat and communicate with either the presenters or with the entire group, so that we can, communicate with you and keep this moving. So that is kind of our intention for the day. You will notice, however, that the presenters are we're all unmuted so that we can be communicating with each other as we move kind of back and forth through our presentation today. So just to start, we want to thank you guys for it wasn't just last week, but from 2 weeks ago, for joining us in Ontario and just starting this journey that we're on for the Health Equity Leadership Institute. And thank you as well for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and move our slides so that we can stay on task. So what I'd like to do is actually unmute everybody at this point and do a quick go-around, round robin, if you will, in terms of if you can say who you are, your name, what county you're from, and if you had any just brief reflections from the kickoff, and then we'll get started. So, Christina, I don't know that I have control of unmuting everyone.
So I have just unmuted everyone? Okay, so I have unmuted everyone.
Hello, this is Tri-City. Can you hear us?
We can hear Tri-City.
Okay, oh, thank you. Thanks.
Sorry, there's somebody who has a lot of feedback. Sharon has. So I'm sorry, Chrissy, I don't know if this is going to work for us right now. So why don't I go? Let me do this. So we currently have. Let's go through who we have. Tri-City has Janice in the room. Carol is there. Also, Chris is there. David Estrada is there, as well as Luis Garcia. Thank you for being present. We have Monica Adrian on the line. We have Eric Mendoza. We have Juan Ibarra, Kim, as well as Nelson. We have Manuel Gomez. Phil Jenkins is with us. Sandra from Los Angeles is with us. We have Sylvia Perez, Santa Barbara. And then we also have Tina, I'm assuming it's Tina Wootman on the line with us? Because it's Tina Brown. Oh, no, it's Tina Brown from Tri-City. Sorry.
Okay.
And Sharon has her hand. Yep.
And Sharon, okay. And Steve and Christy and Christina and Will.
Sharon, I've unmuted you. Go ahead. Sounds like your computer, you're connected by computer. If folks are connected by computer, we can't hear you. So we'll just use the chat feature. Go ahead and type us questions and send us chats, and we'll communicate that way. So we'll keep moving forward.
Okay. All right. Well, glad you all are here, and then we'll kind of have to figure out as we continue this process today and in the future how we can make sure that we're all able to hear and communicate with each other. But glad that you all are here. I wanted to just start by telling you a little bit about what to expect. You've received the agenda, which will be kind of our guiding force for today. Can't seem to get my slides to forward all of a sudden. So in terms of the agenda and how we're going to spend our time today, we've got a full webinar scheduled for you and hope that it will be useful and helpful and productive. Obviously, we're just starting right now with welcoming everyone to the call and doing introductions again, which, again, we've had to do maybe in a different format than we thought. But we're going to spend a chunk of our time in just a few minutes continuing the conversation about your team initiatives, the aims, and your action plan, and talking as well about doing a community readiness assessment. So we'll spend some time addressing that. We'll also talk about HELI in terms of communication and show you at this point the beginnings of the website, the web page that we are developing. Talk with you about what that process will be. Next, we intend to follow up the conversation that we had. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust my screen. But follow up the conversation that we had at the kickoff related to open space. And then finally, we will talk about kind of next steps and what's coming related to HELI and the next webinar and other opportunities. So for today, what we want to accomplish are a couple of things in particular. One is to help you further develop a clear understanding of the next steps in terms of a foundation for your initiatives, for your local teams. So we want to kind of, again, set that foundation of what it is that you're going to be doing and steps to make that happen and planning a process for that with you all. And then the other thing, our other goal is to get some clarity as well about communication related to HELI and the teams and kind of what may work best for all of us. So that is our intention for today. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Will, actually, who is going to begin the conversation about engaging communities in our planning process and aims and objectives and community readiness. So I'm going to okay, so Will, there you go.
Okay. All right, everyone. So we're going to move forward. You know, one of the main things that we want to do is follow up after the initial kickoff and start helping you understand what some of the milestones and some of the next steps are to moving forward and building the foundation and starting to work, both in the context of doing an initiative and then, you know, and that's the context in which you'll be developing your leadership skills. So this first phase of the Health Equity Leadership Institute, there's going to be a lot more emphasis on what it is that you're going to be doing, what's your initiative. But then as we're working on that, we'll be looking at the leadership elements that are related to that, and then we'll be moving more into other strategies of leadership and components of leadership as we move on. But we want to get you started being leaders in your community around health equity. And the best way to do that is to have you be focused on doing something related to health equity in your community, and that's what we're calling an initiative. Each of you will come up with something that is different. We're not necessarily looking for something that everyone's doing the same, but we do have some components that we're suggesting or really looking for that we're offering you and would like to see some version of from you in terms of, you coming together in an effort to address health equity in your community. So, and that's what we're calling an initiative. Now, the assumptions that we're using as we're moving forward is that your health equity initiative will be stronger if it is focused on something the community cares about. There's some concern or problem. We talked about that at the kickoff. We've talked about the importance of having some kind of shared goal or shared aim that you're working towards. And it's helpful to have clear objectives for measuring progress. Take that goal and make it a little more concrete into some objectives that can really help you see how you're doing. We heard from Ken Martinez, if you remember, the importance of identifying or doing some kind of analysis of community readiness, looking at what are some factors in your community that will make that could hinder, and what are some factors that could support, or you could really rely on to move forward this health equity agenda that you're creating with your community. And once you've kind of looked at those factors, then it's helpful to have a plan for moving forward, and a plan on how you're gonna measure your progress. So the objectives are markers, but having an actual plan for how you're moving forward. These are the components that we recommend will make a difference, help make a difference in your health equity initiative. To do that, we believe that community engagement is essential along the way, and this is what distinguishes this as a health equity endeavor, and not and try to distinguish it from what might be, like, say, a project that you might do within an agency, or a project that you might do within an organization. But since this is about something that you're doing for the community, it should be with the community, and that's where the leadership skills come in. Is how do you tap into what the community wants and start moving, what we say, moving the needle, making a difference towards a disparity or some health equity goal that you want to achieve. So I think you'll notice that a lot of this stuff that we're talking about here might sound somewhat typical in terms of system ways of going about things. So I've gone ahead and added some system terminology that we're attaching to these things in red, so you can see where these tie in. But we want to, while we go through this Health Equity Institute, keep in mind that the work that we're doing always involves cross-cultural component to it. We're always doing something that is taking into account that there are different ways that people see things. There's different ways that people do things. And so sometimes we're going to be focusing on a way of doing things that is really from a system perspective, from those who work in agencies, who work in county organizations. And so, that will be the system language, and we'll share that system language with you. But some of you are really out there in the community, you're part of the community, and some of the system language doesn't resonate, and you can realize it doesn't resonate. So it's also your job, and when you're working in these kind of cross-cultural environments, and what we're trying to do to achieve health equity is to find your brokers and find your ways of translating and crossing between these boundaries between different worlds. So we don't want to perpetuate some of the problems that allow for health inequities to persist, and some of those factors are the fact that there is a disconnect between the way the systems that serve our communities work and what our communities want or need, or how they like to work. So if we continue to have a system perspective, we're not going to necessarily be effective at addressing health equity. But since we work with funding that comes through systems, and we're working at trying to change the system, we shouldn't completely abandon the system perspective. And so that's where our assumption here in the Health Equity Leadership Initiative is that we all have to kind of be fluent, or learn to be fluent. If we're a system person, fluent in the different cultural contexts that we're working in. So if you're someone who is working from the system, then it's your role to be that broker and help translate between the system and the community. and take what the community's needs are and make it so that the system understands it and supports it. If you're a community person, then you can help the community understand what the system's ways of doing things are, and help the community understand how to navigate and negotiate and be effective working with systems. So we're always, no matter what stance you are as an individual, think of yourself as having this role of being this broker and this translator, and helping communicate across these different domains. So the more community type focus is on the left, although that's not really community language, but it's less system language, and the language that we're going to be using for systems on the right. Okay, so engaging the communities is essential in a health equity effort for so many reasons, and we'll have more discussions about community engagement. This is just meant to be a quick discussion in terms of next steps for you. So we want you to be, so that's what I'm going to be doing, rather than getting into kind of the benefits and the need for engaging the community and the reasons for engaging community. I just want to talk about that this is an expectation that we have for you in your health equity initiative. So how do we want you to go about it? We recommend that you think about who's not at the table and who should be at the table, and always get into that frame of mind. It's a lot easier to think about who can I work with, and who are my natural allies, and who can I bring. A lot of times that can be in terms of who we already have a relationship with, or who we've already built the trust with, and we know they can come. But that's a great way of going about it. But if you keep this first question in mind, who's not at the table and who should be, that will help us transform the way that we work, and might actually help us achieve some different outcomes if we keep that question in mind. So as you go about engaging community and developing your initiative, and figuring out how you're going to achieve some leadership in an area of health equity that you want to achieve, keep in mind who's not at the table and who should be there. But the other thing that's really essential is there's often a reason why people are not at the table. And so it takes some time and effort to find out what is needed for them to be there. Maybe it's standard things about like the time or transportation or childcare or cost or money. The people, they can't afford to because they need to work during those times and they can't afford to take the time off. All those standard things, of course, is things that we look into. But what I'm asking is for you to try to do that research, whether it's you talk to the people that you think should be there and find out why they would or wouldn't be there, or find someone who can give you some insight, who can be a cultural broker for the people who are missing. And try to find out what it will take. And it might take doing things completely differently, not just addressing transportation needs and childcare needs and food needs and things like that, but it might be a totally different process. And so the key component of a theory of community engagement that we do want to share with you right now is that you think about it as a relationship and building a relationship. So there's going to be ups and downs in relationships. There's going to be a whole process in terms of not really knowing each other, not really trusting each other in the beginning, and then what you have to do to build that trust and build that understanding. And there's going to be hurt feelings, and there's going to be ups and downs. But essentially, if you think about how you build your deep relationships that you have in your life, there does need to be a sense of commitment to the relationship and to making it work with the other person. So keep that relationship perspective in mind instead of thinking in terms of events, outreach events or engagement events, and I think that will help. So that's a little bit of background we want to give you in terms of how you engage with the community. The why in terms of this initiative is we do want you to, as we said back at the kickoff, where you developed an initial aim, we want you to go through some community engagement process to kind of refine that aim. And then get some clarity around objectives and some of the other components I showed you on the previous slide. So With that, we've offered you one technique of doing that, and that's open space. And I just wanted to say a tiny bit more right now, and Steve will say more. But the open space, as you saw, it was a way of bringing people together that encouraged dialogue and really addressed power dynamics, because the agenda was not set by anyone except for the people there, and people talked about whatever they wanted to talk about. So it's certainly a way to kind of address some power dynamics around how meetings are normally held and who controls the agenda and all of that. One of the products, if you remember at the end, we had that little analysis break in between, but people then make commitments. So if you use this technique, and we encourage you to try it and see how it helps you in your different endeavors, but including in this, if you wanted to use it for the Health Equity Leadership Institute, the commitments that you end up with at the end, those might be something that turn into actual steps that people want to take. Like in system language, it might be the framework for an action plan. You end up at the end of a open space meeting with people who are committing to do something, and you have this theme that you start off with. So you can look at how, when it's over, kind of everyone's input might help you refine that initial aim or theme that you had everyone come around with, and you might be able to even identify some objectives or translate some of your findings, your book from the end, into objectives and an aim and an action plan. So you could use that very community approach and then take that information and translate it into the system language in terms of the aim, the objectives, and action plan. So that's one recommendation we have for you as a next step. But we also realize that there are some issues around that in terms of if you have, do you do open space for different language groups in different communities? Or is it better to use, or is there something else that works better for the community that you want to focus on? So the open space is something that we're offering and we're encouraging you to use, but we're not requiring you to use that as your way of getting your community engagement. We trust that you know what will work best for your community. So the key thing is you all walked out of that meeting with an initial aim. That should help you think about who needs to be at the table and who's not at the table, and then think about what engagement process you need to refine your aim and your objectives and start developing an action plan. That's what we're asking you to do and to use in the community engagement process for doing that. Just a quick reminder here, I'm going to go over quickly. There's this term that's called the charter that was part of the materials that we gave you in the presentation we gave you at the kickoff. The charter just combines some different elements. It's one way of making a statement of what it is that you're doing by having the problem statement first, that's the issue you're addressing, and then a clear statement of the aim and some objectives in a section of guidance. So this is just here to remind you, but essentially what we really want you to have is focus on the aim statement. And so again, we're just reminding you what a good aim statement will look like after it's in its rough form and you've been polishing and polishing it. It should have specificity around the boundaries. It should state what's expected to happen, and it should clearly identify the target population, and however you want to define that, and maybe some time frame. And should be concise and clear, not a long thing that's 5 or 6 or 7 lines. So here's an example of, just as a reminder, of a concise statement. Within the next 2 years, we will reduce the incidence of severity of depression and anxiety among Somali refugees in the South County by 50%. So there you have the target population defined by ethnicity and region, the south part of the county. You have the things that you want to change, the targets, the depression and anxiety, and how you want to change them. You want lower incidence and severity, and then you have a time frame and you have some kind of target around it. So that would be an example of a more concise and concrete aim statement that you could get to from those initial statements that you did. And then objectives take that aim that is more concise, and then they break it down even more. Objectives state exactly what's expected to happen in numerical values, but they can focus on process as well as outcomes. So if you want, so here's an example on the first one that's related to the Somali refugee aim that I gave you before. If you said an objective would be that at least 50% of refugees that receive services will have these PHQ-9 and GAD-7 screening scores. The PHQ-9 and GAD-7 are screens that are used often in primary care. They're quick. They're 9 questions for depression, is the PHQ-9, and 7 questions for anxiety. There are also more abbreviated versions of these where you could do the PHQ-2, like 2 questions around depression. And so this is a process measure. They say, well, if our aim is to reduce depression, what do we need to get there? And that's what you do with the objective. You say, well, maybe we start screening people who go into these refugee services and ask them 2 questions around depression, or 9 questions around depression, 7 questions around anxiety, and we start to identify people who have depression and anxiety. So that doesn't actually achieve your aim, but it's a step to achieving your aim. So then you write this objective that says, wow, we want to be able to do this to be able to achieve that aim. So that's how you can do your objectives. They're a more concrete piece to get to your aim, and they help you focus even further the activities that you're going to be doing in your initiative. But they can also be outcomes like specific mental health or physical health outcomes. So the second one is at least 90% of people screened will have their scores decrease. That means they'll actually get better. You'll actually have a decrease in depression and anxiety as reported by the people that you're screening. So that would be an outcome objective, not a process objective. And another outcome is, another outcome you might want to have is in terms of quality of services. Now these examples are very service focused, but I just wanted to give you a concrete example. You'll work on the aims and objectives that fit for what your community wants you to focus on in terms of health equity and disparities, and we'll work with you in refining. We'll work with you too. So that's where we'll ask you to share with us your aim and your objectives so that we can give you feedback and see where you're heading. It'll be optional if you want to also include a problem statement. We find that the problem statement helps people articulate their concern, and that can be more community-friendly language. So if you start with that problem statement. The last section, this guidance section, is just where you can add some other things if you want to, if you needed to. That doesn't fit in a concise aim or an objective, but you might talk about some special considerations or some certain strategies that you might use. Maybe that's where you can list the partners who will be working together towards this initiative, or anything like that you can put in this guidance. So in this example, there's a definition of a term that could be used in an aim or an objective about wellness coordination services, and this guidance just says what that is. So again, our main focus is that you provide us with an aim and objectives, but you could also throw in that problem statement that helps bind your community together around the initiative. The other area we would like you to focus on is in doing some kind of readiness assessment once you've got some clarity around what you want to do before you start really clarifying even further what you're going to do. So if you have your aim and your objectives, that gives you your direction, but it doesn't tell you the how you're going to do it. So before you do the how, it's really helpful to think about what your community might already be doing around this. What do people know about the existing efforts? Maybe there's some efforts that are not well known and they're not really effective or not popular, or something's going on. So you'll want to know about that because you'll want to tap into existing efforts. You'll want to find out if there are barriers to the efforts having more widespread impact. So you'll want to see what things does different leadership buy into. Your own leadership in your own organization and any of your partners that you want to work with, what are they willing to buy into? Because if they're not willing to support you, it's going to be harder. So you'll want to think about that. You want to think about the community climate. Is there a political environment that's really against this issue that you're focused on this disparity you want to address? Is it a really sensitive topic? Is it something that there's a lot of desire around because of an incident that happened? Maybe there's a lot of good community backing around this area that you want to focus on. And also, you might want to see to what extent does the community is familiar with some of the components of the issue, some of the challenges around this issue that you're trying to address, and then what resources are available. So just having some kind of assessment, whatever process you want to follow, whether it's your team answering these questions, your team, again, engaging with the community is what we recommend. But thinking about this, then you'll be ready to move forward and have more concrete steps of what you're going to do. So that's the flow that we want to take you through. And I just want to pause now before I pass it on to Steve and see if there's any questions. So it would be great if you could raise your hand, and then I can try to unmute you. And your control panel has a hand raising feature. But if not, if you chat or add a question right now, if you wanted anything that you wanted to share or questions that you had, we do want you to participate. We're just going to take a little while until everyone's used to how to use this software. So I am not seeing any hands being raised, and I'm not seeing any new questions coming up. Okay. Well, with that, then, let me pass it on to Steve, and he's going to take you on to your action planning. So, Steve?
Got it. Okay, I think we're on, huh?
Yep.
So there may or may not be questions, but that are raised hands, but it probably will be maybe a little useful, even if we have a couple of you out there say something about where you are in your aims. There will be a formal next steps type of conversation in terms of, you know, when will people, teams have their aims ready for us to look at. But before we go into action planning, since action planning assumes folks have looked at what their aims are, it probably wouldn't hurt to even hear from a couple of you out there on where you are in terms of having your aims ready or feeling like your aims are somewhat settled or not. I'm not sure how we do that, Christina.
This is Christy. I think one of the things we can do is if folks can raise your hand, and then we can unmute whoever raises their hand to respond to that question.
You can raise your hand, or you can submit a question, or you can also write it as a chat. So somebody submitted a question right now. Oh, Steve, there's a request. If you could please go ahead and go into presentation mode on your PowerPoint.
Oh, got it. So anyone out there feeling courageous this morning to give us an idea of where you might be before we jump into action planning? It really would help me out. Otherwise, this is a bit more didactic, which is not going to get us exactly what we need today.
Well, we can ask some specific teams. So Janice is with Tri-City, right? Tri-City, how are you guys doing?
Yes.
Your process?
I've met with Tony and Remy, and we've had a conversation about the population that we are serving, and we've had evidence that that number is really significant about men and women who come and get services that are uncovered, they don't have health insurance. So I think the population that we initially wanted to investigate is accurate, and I don't think that's going to change. And I have the approval from both Tony and Remy and upper management to conduct an open space.
Great.
Excellent. So that you'll get more refinement in terms of what the community wants to do about it, right?
Exactly. And when people come into our clinic on Mondays and Tuesdays for inquiry, there's a way that we can track maybe where they live and then go in the 3 cities that these men and women are coming from and do an outreach to them, because that's where our clients are coming from.
Great.
So it's baby steps for us, and so we've gotten a lot more clarity than we did 2 weeks ago.
Awesome.
That's great. Perfect.
Let's go team by team, if you may. How about, shall we try San Francisco? Juan, I've unmuted you.
So from San Francisco, do you all have any updates related to your aims or your process?
I think San Francisco was unable to locate their audio control. So I don't know what their audio pin is. I can't help them with that.
Okay, well, that's fine. If you can type us kind of where you are so that we know from you, that would be great. If someone could from San Francisco, that would be great. And let's move on. So let's do, should it be Sylvia for Santa Barbara? Hi, Sylvia. You've been unmuted.
I don't think you can hear me, but I'll try to type something.
I hear you. I hear you.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. No, we haven't had a chance to get together the meeting, but I was just texting with Tiffany, and maybe if the team can get together, maybe we can do like a short conference call just for the whole team to be up to date. Right now, I'm the only one here in Santa Barbara for the conference call.
Okay.
Manuel,
but I will pass the information to
oh, San Bernardino. Yeah. Okay.
To the rest of the team.
Okay, Sylvia. Sounds good.
Thank you.
So let's go with Merced. Sharon, you're unmuted.
I know Sharon was communicating online earlier. I don't know if she can hear us or is on audio.
So maybe Sharon, you too. I've unmuted you, but we're not hearing you. So if you too could type us,
or we could
let us know where you are.
Or let's see if Reverend or Pastor Jenkins can share with us.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, we are still trying to get it together, so we have not completely decided yet. So we're still working on that. But as soon as we get it together, then we will pass that information on.
Okay. All right. And Sharon raised her hand. I'm going to try again and unmute Sharon. Sharon, you're unmuted. And Sharon, you're connected by computer, and that it seems like maybe some folks have computers that don't have microphones, and so we do encourage those of you who are connected by computer to instead connect by the phone. Yes. Perfect. Okay, good, Sharon.
Is she chatting?
Send you an audio pin, and then if you enter the pound and then that number and pound, pound 36 pound, Sharon, that will work for you. Pound 36 pound.
And do you by chance see that for San Francisco? Because I don't see it on mine.
Okay, and I think Sharon, no, you're still not. Okay, yeah, San Francisco, I'll check Juan. Well, Juan doesn't have a PIN because they're connected by computer. So they have to call in, and then we will be able to give them an audio PIN.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sharon, sorry, you're almost there, but you need to press.
Can I take a minute to give out that phone number, Will? I'm sorry. So the phone number to dial in, everyone, is 415-655-0069. The access code is 576-368-231. This was also provided in the email once you confirmed your registration.
And then you have to enter an audio PIN that is given to you, and we can tell if you have it or not. And then you'll start as muted, and then we can unmute you.
So as Sharon is still trying to do that,
okay.
Maybe Juan and the folks from San Francisco are still trying to do that. I recognize that Sandra, I think, is on the line from LA. I know they're still in process of, developing their team. But by the way, for everyone who's on the call on Los Angeles, has decided and it will be joining the HELI group and team for the upcoming year.
And I've unmuted them. So Sandra, go ahead.
Sandra, don't know if you have any updates that you can share, but did want to.
Thank you, Christy. We are exactly where you said. We are in the process of forming our group, and we have a meeting next Tuesday, and I hope to be able to report something more specific next time.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I also want to just say that Sharon has submitted to us that she says Merced has echoed what Pastor Jenkins said, that Merced has not met yet. And then also Manuel Gomez from San Bernardino stated we as a team must meet to define our objectives and actions. And then Juan has also said that our initial aim to address African American health disparities with emphasis on community-defined evidence. So they'll continue to do that. That's what they're looking at. And then also just to answer the audio pin, once you call in, we'll be able to give you an audio pin. But you have to call in, and you can still hear the call, but you won't have an audio pin until we give it to you.
Okay, so I think we've heard from everyone. If there's someone who still wanted to share something, you can try raising your hand or type us a question or a chat.
Well, that was helpful, and just I wanted to place that in context because as we go into action planning, this may seem a little early for some of you, but it is important that we cover it now because I have a feeling that many of the teams, once they hit the ground running, they're going to be ready for actually putting some kind of plan together faster than when we may be able to meet again. So the goal now was to introduce you to the action planning process, have it available for you as a tool, and that way when you're ready to start, and many of you probably will be ready to start in the next few weeks, you won't need to wait for another webinar or conversation. But this does assume that you've moved to a place where you feel that you have at least one aim that's fairly stable for what it is that you want to do as a HELI team. What the action planning process is, I'm sure many of you have either been part of something like this before. You may have called it strategic planning. You may have just called it planning. But the idea is to create some type of a written document that will give you a chance to see where you're headed as a team. We know that some of the teams are going to be more diverse than others, so there'll be many of you who have team members who aren't in the same building or maybe in the same area, and you'll have to communicate and look at a plan in a virtual way. So it's important to make sure the stuff is down on paper that people can actually see it and share it. We're usually in action planning, the assumption is you're working as a team towards a shared aim or purpose. The team is agreeing to share some risks and responsibilities. You're outlining a document that's saying who's going to do what and what kinds of resources do you need help with. But there is an assumption that people are going to sign up for and be responsible for certain activities within this overall plan you're creating. It is important to think about, as you're doing action planning, similar things that Will just covered in the previous session about community engagement. It's going to be difficult for your action plan to be as useful if your team that's creating the action plan isn't diverse. And for diverse, you want to think about, are you including different individuals and organizations that might have different viewpoints and different ways of looking at the world? Some people may not be part of formal organizations. They might be community members that want to join your effort as part of the HELI team. So you want to think about that they're not all going to be organizational or program level people. Culture, who they represent, and I'll show you something briefly and how we talked about culture at a previous presentation, but it's really broad. Are you including people who will have a viewpoint that may represent different ethnicities, different age groups, different socioeconomic levels? Depending on what you decide to take on as a HELI team, you want to make sure you have some representation that really represents that rich diversity you need in your community. Importantly, also think about power levels and voice. Many people who come to these kinds of action planning sessions usually are people who are familiar with them and have a history of doing them, so they may be more vocal. And it's probably going to be useful to you if you can think of how do we include some people who may not be the regulars who come to these kinds of meetings, but still may be valuable members in the community. People who may not normally have a voice, how do we make our action planning process easier for them to participate? And being sensitive to, do we have the same people showing up around the table that we would expect? The purpose of the action plan is for moving things forward, and it's important to use it as a tool not just for planning but for monitoring. So in terms of going forward, the idea is to outline your plans in a way that you can coordinate people and resources over time and then look at something that you can refine. It's not a one-time document, what you create, and it's set in stone. It's a flexible document, and the idea is to look at it as often as your HELI team will meet, ideally at least once a month, and think about, are we on track? Is this plan represent where we want to go? What's keeping us back from progress and what we need to change? Briefly, this slide that many of you saw in previous webinars, previous workshops rather, and just thinking about the different people who may represent culture in your community, but it's important to think of variety and think of which groups may often be left out. I know many of the HELI teams, for example, have some people who are representing the faith community, but that's an important part of health in every community. So you want to think about to what extent do we have or could we include the faith community and what our HELI team is. These are just some ideas of looking at representative voice in your action planning process. Definition, just as a recap, it's a written set of instructions or a map of how you will achieve your aim or purpose for your HELI team. There's lots of models and methods out there. If you were to Google action planning, you're going to find overwhelming amounts of different illustrations for it. But these 5 components that are listed here probably represent what you're going to see as the most common elements or parts and pieces of an action plan. It includes measurable objectives, and usually those objectives have some time-oriented description in them. We'll achieve a certain increase or a decrease in something we want to do by a certain period of time. We'll reach a certain number of people or include certain power brokers in our HELI team by a certain period of time. So they're measurable in the sense that they have some kind of quantitative number attached to them, but also a time period. The action plan then takes those objectives and identifies specific steps. What will people do? What actions are necessary to achieve those objectives? And prioritize in some way in terms of what might come first, second, or third. The next thing that would be included are what people and resources and time requirements would be for each action. So similar to what we talked about for the objective, you'd have some time requirement of when certain deliverables would happen in terms of actions and who would be responsible for those. Action plans often include a place to anticipate challenges and write in things that probably the person or people who are leading a certain action might confront. Not necessarily to solve those challenges, but at least to brainstorm what should the people be looking for as they're moving forward in those actions. And then last but not least, most action plans include some kind of measurement component for progress and results. This may not be an evaluation plan. For the action plan, it really is much more basic. For example, if you say you're gonna recruit 5 more people for the HELI team by the end of July, basically is at the end of July, did you get 5 people there? So when you see measurement of progress and results, this is a very basic form of measurement. This is not about an evaluation plan. It's more about can you check on progress. Key steps. It's important to have a core team be responsible for the action plan. Your HELI team may be larger in some cases. Some of you may have smaller teams. But it is important that you select the 4 or 5 or 6 people who will say, we're responsible for this living document. We're going to take this forward and follow through with what's happening. There might be many people assigned to the action plan, but you want to think about who's going to be your core team. You do want to plan on time to complete your action plan. 2 or more meetings, usually somewhere around 3 hours each, are important because during these meetings, you're going to be brainstorming the actions that might be important for your objectives. Some of you may come with action steps, like Will was saying, based on an open space or other type of community engagement process. But it does take a significant amount of time to really listen to people, prioritize what's important, and then actually think about how do we make this happen, who's responsible, and how quickly and what resources do we need to complete our actions. The meeting should really be focused on listing, prioritizing, and establishing resources in a timeline. So you're not brainstorming your objective or your aim. You're coming prepared with an objective or aim, and now you're thinking of what's it going to take for us to move forward and accomplish this. It's really critical within the action planning process that there's some kind of rules and some kind of schedule of how will this core team follow up, monitor, and refine the plan beyond the first meeting. So at that very first meeting, you don't want to leave that first meeting of the action plan without some idea of when are we going to follow up on these things, how are we going to make sure we hold ourselves accountable. Otherwise, the action plan becomes something that you put on a refrigerator wall and you just visit every once in a while and look at it, but it's not a living document. So you really want to think about how is this plan going to guide you as a team. Some examples, and again, there's many I picked that are a little different from each other just to give you a sense of what might you do to get together and prioritize your actions. Eventually, you would create some type of written document that would put the actions you think are more important in terms of your objective. So this model here lists the actions in terms of activities. What activities would be happening? There's 4 boxes here. Obviously, you can expand these. These are, they can be Word documents, and this is a PDF file, but we can give it to you as a Word document. You can expand the number of activities that you would have. You'd list what those activities are, ideally in some kind of prioritized order, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. You think about what kinds of resources are needed to accomplish those things, who would lead them, and usually there should be at least one person, but depending on the activity, you might have more than one. And then the timeline, how will you be accomplishing this in terms of months for the next 9 months of HELI or longer, depending on what you decide to do. At the bottom of this sheet, the plan, so for the objective and activities, how are you going to know if you're making progress? What kinds of indicators will tell you if you're moving along as planned? What kinds of indicators in terms of outcomes would you need to see to say something has been completed? And how will you do that? It may be as simple as, again, as we said earlier, just saying we've recruited 5 people. It could be an update from the team. It could involve something more specific such as a survey or counting certain things beyond just a self-report of how many people we've got participating in certain programs. So the evaluation plan at the bottom in this situation breaks things up a little bit more specifically than most action plans do. And again, you decide how specific you're going to be as long as there's some type of monitoring. This other model, Model 2, a little bit maybe more familiar to folks. This is just, I think I've seen this around a lot more. Again, you have your objective. This also has a goal, which might be a larger purpose for the group that the team is actually going for. And this one has the action steps in the first column, who's responsible, who will actually establish whatever, well, this case is an example of a partnership, but who will actually take responsibility for whatever actions you have, the time frame, the challenges, and how you respond, what may get in the way for certain activities, and how will you actually address those potential challenges, what kind of support and assistance, this could be resources or human capital, that might actually help you achieve certain activities. And then, again, last but not least, how will you measure your success? How will you know if that activity got completed and to the quality or level that you would want to as a team? Action plans can be big documents, maybe 20, 30 pages long if you wanted to, but I would recommend for most HELI teams that you try to identify within your objectives. If you were to have, for example, 1 or 2 aims, you might have 1 or 2 objectives for those aims, and within that maybe a document that's no longer than 10 pages long that would list those activities. You're not listing micromanagement level activities and tasks for each activity or action. There might be one of you that takes it on may have their own plan on how you accomplish that. The action plan is really for those broader steps that you would take to meet the objectives that you have. So it's not a document that micromanages the team. It's more of a document that broadly describes where the team is going and how will we know that it got there.
Steve, can I add something?
Sure.
Oh, or just to ask you to talk about it. And since these aren't teams, you have your internal team, but also you have an external collaborative. That's another reason for it not to be so focused on micromanaging, right?
Correct.
Because this is kind of just guiding the general effort in the community that your team is helping work on.
Correct. So within your team, and the assumption is that you will be working. Maybe there's 4 or 5 or 6 of you that are going to be working on a lot of things in more detail. The action plan should be something that you could share with a larger audience as well, to say, here's where we are going as a HELI team and what we hope to accomplish over the next 9 months. All right, so let's go back to the PowerPoint and do it in the big view. To think about of what these action plans.
Steve, one more question.
Sure. Yep.
Oh, never mind. Sorry.
You sure? Okay.
Yep, positive.
Thinking about what might make this process more effective for you. These are lessons from prior work. Definitely thinking about how your action plan may connect to broader organizational strategic plans and other guiding documents. So many of you are working within a county structure and you're engaging community partners. You want to think about these actions and activities that we've laid out in our plan. How do they connect with the county's larger strategic plan? The HELI team may have things specifically for health equity. How do those things connect with what's more important to either the county or other stakeholders who may have their own strategic plans? Critical in terms of diversity in your team, this really makes or breaks the utility of the action planning process. If the action plan is created by a very small, narrow, focused team, it doesn't include diversity in terms of people with different authority and power and different viewpoints, you're really going to get something that's not going to be as helpful to guide the overall initiative. So I think that it's a no-brainer. It may seem very simple, but I want to really emphasize that strongly, that thinking about diversity in team is critical. It is wise to have some type of external facilitator and definitely a note-taker. When you get together as a team, you want to make sure everyone has a chance to talk and speak their mind. So having someone who may just be there solely for the process of timekeeping and moving it along and taking notes really helps out to focus on what you want to say and getting everybody involved. This does not have to be a paid position. The main thing I want to make sure I emphasize is someone that's external. So if you have a core HELI team, again, of 5, 6, 7 people, this might be someone you invite from another organization that's connected with this, but in a parallel manner, and could serve as a guide mainly for time, making sure everyone gets heard, and then making sure you have a note-taker there that's going to be capturing everything that's said. You do want to balance out the time for what it takes to create action plans. You don't want to spend months on this. This is something that you could probably do within a week, maybe 2, but many of you probably will do it in a week after you've heard enough from what you feel as the community and you feel they've been engaged in your aims. You'd probably want to crank this out in 1 or 2 or 3 meetings within a short time period. The longer you wait, the more tedious it's going to get and also confusing. Why did we set that action? What did that mean? People will forget things. So you do want to make sure you try to accomplish your action plans within a relatively short period of time. And then you want to think of regular review and revision. Without that, as we said before, the action plan is just another piece of paper. It only becomes a live planning document if you set up regular review and then some kind of refinement of what you're going to do differently based on your review of your action plan. Our time is a bit limited today, but I do think it's important before we move on to the next couple of things to think about what do you think would help you create the buy-in for your action plan, mainly because that's going to be a make it or break it kind of situation for the utility of your action plan. What do you feel is going to help you create an action plan with the greatest buy-in and ownership from the community that you're serving? And then maybe also, how ready do you feel your HELI team is in beginning its action planning process? I think for the second question, we probably heard from that earlier on when we went around the phone and people said where they are in this. It sounds like people may not be ready for this yet, but they will be in the next few weeks. Would anyone like to speak up? I don't know if we want to say with Tri-City maybe or San Bernardino in terms of what you feel will help you create an action plan with the greatest buy-in.
We'll need to unmute them if they would like to.
San Bernardino?
Oh.
Tri-City.
Tri-City, which one are you?
Please raise your hand and then we can go ahead and unmute you. Or submit your question.
Okay, it doesn't seem like hands that are raised.
You got somebody?
No, I'm not seeing any hands that are being raised right now. Do just a check and kind of go through each team. What would you prefer, Steve?
No, I would say even I was hoping that if someone had any challenges around this one, we may want to talk about it a little bit. But that's going to be the most important part, is making sure that there's really a wide, more diverse group being part of the action plan. So maybe that people are comfortable with that. We will definitely be checking on that again as we go through the next few weeks. Is sort of how are you doing, and how is your team representing the different voices that might need to be in your community? But really, each HELI team is the leader for that in terms of who should be involved and what represents your community. So I just want to make sure if anyone has any challenges on that, we can cover that. If there's no hands that are raised, I can move on.
Okay.
Okay. So let's move on. The next part, there's two pieces around evaluation. And these are designed in terms of checklists of things that you could be doing right now without waiting too much longer in terms of counting some things or maybe looking at evaluation internally. And one of these things is what I call a data resources checklist. And the data resources checklist is fairly simple. Many of you, again, may already have experience with this. Some of you may have your checklist. But it's thinking about what resources exist within our community that might have access to information. And that could be data, but there's also other sources of information that would be important for us to evaluate or measure our progress. Many of you are in the process of creating your aims, so this may seem too early. This is not about actually getting the data at this point. It's just about creating the resource list. So I want to make sure everyone's clear that this checklist is not about actually finding that information and getting the actual data. It's about really creating a contact list around specific kinds of information that you're all very likely to need in the near future. So it's probably not too late to start creating this list of where might this information be, who do we contact, the other. So the thing usually included in this kind of a resource checklist, a data checklist, is first the source. And there's 5 sources that I'm listing here in terms of the kind of information that you want to be looking for in your community. Where do these sources of data currently exist? Demographics of the one or more regions. That could be neighborhoods or other things that are relevant to your goals. These could be age groups, ethnicity, race, languages served, but there's many different kinds of demographics. The demographics are mainly describing what people or populations look like. Separately from that are things that related to more of the social and economic conditions of one or more groups or regions that, again, are important to your goals. The socioeconomic conditions are a little different than your standard demographics in the sense that now you're delving into things like income, unemployment, education, voter registration that might involve things like civic engagement. So you're looking at more of the life conditions in your community that might be relevant to the kinds of aims that you're addressing. A third source of information would be service-related information. This is what many of you may already have access to, and it wouldn't hurt to start listing what kinds of information will you get and who has that now. Type and number and quality of services relevant to your goals, the location, the hours of operation, the volume they may have, the characteristics of clients. Who would have that in your community? Listing their name, their contact information right now is a great way to start before you get to a point of needing it. And then the fifth item there in terms of the kinds of data and information you would look at is probably what you're most focused on, which are health and wellness statistics of the groups and community overall in terms of your overall aims. What kinds of things are people suffering from in terms of morbidity and mortality? You might look at more positive things like indices of happiness and quality of life, life expectancy, but these are more of what people traditionally call the outcomes indicators of what you're going to be tackling with in terms of your HELI team. For each of these resources, you'd have the contact information, maybe there's formal leaders within agencies or informal leaders within your community. This type of information. think of people like data managers, but you also may want to think of local legislators and elected officials. Oftentimes they have sources of information that they use for their own purposes that they'd be willing to share with you as a HELI team. So thinking broadly of who has access to this information that they can share it to you, ideally for free and not at a cost. And the third component that you want to think of and including in your data resource checklist is some type of descriptive information. This is fairly subjective, but we're going to be able to help you with this, is something that characterizes the quality of your resources that you're identifying. So granted, you've identified maybe a list of 10 or 12 resources that you think you're going to need during your HELI teamwork, but you do want to write some comments about whether that data or that information is timely, whether it's old, whether it's representative of what you're looking for. I know many of you have commented, for example, that the resources and data that's available may not be available for specific ethnicities or might not be available for specific communities. So basically, in terms of this third area, you're critiquing the quality of the data resources that you have. So when you're ready to use them, you're a bit prepared in terms of, well, this one might be better than that one. You're not looking at files here. There might be summative reports that are out there. You know, maybe there's white papers within agencies or white papers that your city or county has created. There might be white papers from other places outside of your region that maybe because your region is in a special place and it's been studied by maybe UCLA or the RAND Corporation. So you want to think broadly of sources of information that you will eventually be able to use to understand your progress as a team. Example, just briefly, is something the U.S. Census for 2010. I bet nearly all of you will have this information. You'd have your contact for your access is the website, but you do want to critique the quality of that source relative to what it is you think you're going to need. So it's not very timely. It's only done once every 10 years. It's very comprehensive, but it's accurate and reliable. But it may be population level and not easy to disaggregate group. So, example.
Oh, Steve, you keep breaking up, so I don't know if it's the phone, but can you just repeat that last bit? It's gotten a little bit worse over the last 5 minutes.
And let's do if you heard it or not. So the sources of information that you identify should also be critiqued for their quality. How useful are they to you in terms of your aims? And the example with the census was that maybe the census data is not very timely because it's done every 10 years, but it is a comprehensive resource and it may be very accurate and reliable, but it may not be disaggregated into the groups that you need. So as you identify your sources of information, you also want to make sure you write something about them in terms of how you feel they may be of some level of quality or performance to you. Am I okay?
Well, you were, and then now you're not. Or do you happen to be on a cell phone?
No, just a regular phone. I can change phones if we need to. If this is really bad, then let me know. But I'll stay on here unless it sounds terrible. Three things. Yep.
Go ahead. I was going to say, go ahead and keep it moving, and we'll let you know if it's...
Sure. So 3 things to think about in terms of next steps. And next steps meaning today, this coming week. You do want to identify within your HELI team at least one person who's going to be responsible for leading the development and maintenance of this checklist. Again, remember, this is not the person who's going to be doing everything around your measurement and evaluation activities. It's just one person who's going to be the go-to person for finding out who can we contact in our community for sources of information like the ones that we've just listed. You do want to think about when and how often are you going to review your checklist, ideally on a weekly basis, especially in the next month or so. You want to generate a list of maybe a dozen or half a dozen good sources of information for the kinds of data that you're most likely going to need. And I do want to make sure you know that as you do this process, we'll be available to help you find data sources if you're stuck and you're not sure where to look at. And also we'll be available to help you assess the quality of those data sources. So if you find something and you're not sure about maybe how good it is, maybe how, notice how accurate the information is or reliable, we'll be happy to help you with that as well. Am I coming through okay?
Yep, you're sounding good.
Great. I'm just going to still. Maybe the movement did something. I was moving around. Okay. The thing that we'd want to share with you is this other checklist, which is about documenting your team process or evaluating your HELI team as it moves along. This is also something that you can start today. Some of you may have already started this, but this is it is an evaluation and measurement activity, but it's more about how you as a team are documenting the kinds of decisions and lessons that you have over time, so you can start improving your team process and have something to look back at and say, here's how we've grown, here's how we've changed. This is not designed to be some kind of a micromanagement process of documenting everything about what you do. So I'm going to give you some ideas here of what kind of things you might look at in terms of your team process. Important things to look at when you're looking at the team process are decisions. Decisions important to the development of the team. For example, if you recruited new team members, who's come on? If you've lost team members, who's fallen off? What are transitions in leadership? Those are critical to documenting the process of your team. And the way you want to think about this is, as you're getting new team members, it'd be great if team members had a way, a systematic way, such as a journal or some other document, where new members can look at the history of what you've done. Because it's going to be difficult as you move along for someone who joins you 3 or 4 months down the line to get a comprehensive snapshot of what you've accomplished as a team. So this is a written record of how is your HELI team moving along and what do you think are important decisions, lessons, and accomplishments. So as you get new team members, you can share with that much faster, but also so you can refine your process and have some way to look back at where you've been. Another area of decisions are decisions about operation and function. You might be listing, for example, on this day we met and we decided on these policies, and this is how we're going to make decisions about how we recruit new members. This is how we're going to make decisions about what we decide to do and not do. Any key actions that demonstrate progress towards your aim. So if something important happened that you believe was a move forward towards a specific objective or aim, you document that in your journal. Community actions that may show support for or address an important objective. Resources that you may have gained over time. So if you maybe got some free support or some type of mini grant or something to help you, you'd want to document that in that journal so there's a history of what kinds of resources you're generating over time. It's also important to think about documenting things that are happening in your community that might affect your HELI team and its function, but you may not have control over. And these are changes in community conditions or the context of what's happening in your community, the context of your organizations and agencies that really the HELI team may not directly be affecting, but they may actually affect your team. Maybe there's a new policy that's been passed, maybe an ordinance in your city that's going to affect people who are of a certain ethnicity or maybe immigrant status in a certain way. Someone within your team was probably going to know those changes, and it's important to document them in this kind of a history to know what may have influenced your success and progress over time. You always want to document lessons and ideas that might be improving the team. So what are we learning over time? What did we learn this month as was most important about recruiting members or doing open space or doing community engagement? It's important to document challenges and problems. Again, every little thing that goes wrong, but maybe something of significance that you think is holding the team back. Document that as something that either you can address or could be addressed in the future. And definitely last but not least, documenting success stories of your HELI team. Maybe there's an important new contact that you made or an important new gate that's been opened to you to access more resources or an important power broker. Documenting those kinds of success stories is going to allow not just you as a team to celebrate now, but as new team members come on, a way to look back and say, well, look at what's been happening, look what's been being accomplished this team. This is separate from things you might measure in terms of outcomes for your disparities at the community level. This is really much more of a process method. Common ways of doing this, obviously a journal system. Many groups will have someone assigned as a secretary or historian, and they document and keep track of this process just in a paper-based form. Increasingly, there's online journals and documentation systems. It could be a database. It could be a discussion forum that's well organized. The online process allows it to be more easily shared with people very quickly as opposed to the paper process where you have to find someone or make copies. And people also use audio and video recordings in terms of maybe audio recording what's happening at meetings and videotaping specific accomplishments. But again, those are harder to organize. It's always important to have some kind of written track record either on paper or on the web. I do want to close by saying that personal emails and individual notes are often not as helpful for documenting the HELI team process. They can be if someone is going to take the time to organize them, and also if there's a way to share them publicly. But email exchanges tend to stay among the team or group that's emailing, and they can't easily be shared as a sense of history of what the team is doing over time. So you want to think of some other method besides email to be doing this. We are over time, but I do want to just show online, just in case someone on the call today is interested in an online resource. I have access to at least 2 that people are using that are very simple online journals, and I'm not sure how well this is showing up on the screen, but this is one that just very simply, when someone clicks on a new record, they can their name, when things started, and then what happened, why was this important to our project, and then what's the best thing that describes this item. This is probably maybe too small, but the checklist here says accomplishment, challenge, a lesson, a modification in something we did or something else. And so this allows you to query your journal and pull for, let's say, a meeting that you might be having in a week or a month. What are the 5 lessons or 5 challenges that we had this last week? And with the online journal, many of you can report at one time. Post per journal, it's important to have one historian and one secretary. So this gives you a little bit more flexibility. And then, of course, when you do these kinds of forms, you can quickly query them and prepare written reports for them because they've already been typed and organized into some kind of manner. So that's it for the team process evaluation for now. Christina, are there any hands raised or anything that's coming up?
Steve, this is Christy, and one question I have with this online journal, it looks impressive, and I'm just curious, how might teams access something like this? Is there a particular resource that you would recommend, or are there multiple kind of sites?
Yeah, well, for this one specifically, this is just an online form and database that I've created for a lot of the projects that we use. So for this simple one, it's really just letting me know, and it's freely available, and I can just set it up for whoever wants to use it. It's very basic. You can export it to Excel. It's all your own data, so you can use it as you want. So this one that I'm showing you now, which is just the project journal, just let me know, and I'll set it up for you.
Awesome.
I know that we had also talked about, Steve, possibly creating a wiki space. So if people wanted to create their own wiki space, maybe we can offer a webinar for that, just an optional webinar tutorial on how to create one, so you can do some project management on there.
Yeah, I'd encourage that, because the wiki space might actually be a lot easier for many people out there on the call. And it's a place where you can upload your documents, your meeting notes, and things like that, but also discuss them. And then it's very easy to modify. And so I'm not sure if everyone out there is a wiki expert, but I would highly encourage that. You could do the journal and the wiki, but the wikis are pretty easy.
But could the wiki serve as a journal space as well? It
is, yeah. I mean, really, this journal that you're seeing here is based off of a wiki. You just can't see it. So that's why I usually start with the wiki. This just looks like a cleaner version because it's only selected a few things. So yeah, Christina, that would be really, I think, useful, because wikis are really flexible. This journal is just a part of a wiki. Good. Any other questions,
folks? So again, if you've got at this point, if you can raise your hand, send a chat, and we can unmute you.
Okay. I don't think we see anybody who's raising their hand or chatting or asking a question at this time, but if there is, I can assist with that. Oh, we have a question. Can we call him and get the info on how to set it up? That's from Phil Jenkins.
Yeah, just send me an email, and it's very easy. Just send me an email, and then I will give one of you, whoever emails me, I'll give you administrative privileges so you can invite other people, and basically you have control over it.
And your email, Steve, is what?
I just sent out to
209.
everybody.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, thanks you.
You sent it over email, Christina, or via chat on the
No,
web?
I'm doing it on the webinar, sending it out to everyone. I sent his email.
Can you just say it anyway, Steve, just in case folks may end up listening to this recording can hear it too?
Sure. 209-489-9913.
And your email address?
SROUSSOS5@gmail.com.
We'll have it audio version, and then Christina has sent it as well.
Okay, Janice, go ahead.
We have a question. Will all of the questions and the PowerPoint be available afterwards?
Yes. So that's a question. We sent that by chat, but not everyone might be seeing their chat. All the PowerPoints will be posted on the website. That's where we're going next. I'm going to show you where. And so will the audio recording.
Are the chats also being captured?
Yes, I think there's certainly a way that the questions are being captured. I don't know about the methodology of the chats, but we'll put all the material up related to the webinar, the recording, and then we'll also put the question log, and I imagine there's a chat log as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And all the PowerPoints and the handouts and everything, there's a whole lot of information, so if we try to email everything, it's too much data to send. So we will get it up as soon as possible.
Okay, so with that, that's a good segue to move on. Okay, so before I do this, I just want to say, so that's been a lot. We've given you a lot of stuff, and I just want to assure everyone that we know you're not there yet, and this might seem overwhelming. It also might seem different than what you might have been expecting, and want you to understand that we're giving you these frameworks to help you be effective in achieving your health equity goals. So we are completely available to work with you and seeing how that will work for your health equity initiative that you want to do. So don't feel overwhelmed, and don't feel that this seems a lot of stuff seems like more complicated. We will help you translate this to something that will make a difference for your community, and that's the goal. So we're giving you the system tools and the system language, but it's so that you can be effective at a system level, but we also want to make sure it's something that's meaningful to you at a community level. So a lot of information came at you, but we will be working with you. So I want you to feel comfortable about that. And what I want to move to now at this stage as we start wrapping up a little bit is I want to show you what we're going to be using for communication with you. Since there's a lot of materials, what we're doing is we're creating a presence on a website that we have for the Institute. And the website is the California Health Equity website. It's cahealthequity.org. And the link is on the agenda. So you have the agenda, you have the link. But I just want to show you, and you can also type californiahealthequity.org, both will work, CA Health Equity or California Health Equity. I just want to show you, the link is to the, I want to show you how to get to where we're going, but the link is to the Health Equity Leadership Institute page, but should you not have that link and you just can remember California Health Equity and you find the website that looks like this, under Resources and Tools, you'll see a tab that says California Health Equity Leadership Institute. So you just look under the tab, Resources and Tools, go to Health Equity Leadership Institute, and then that will take you to the Institute main page. Now this is the main page that will have just information for the public about the Institute, and this is where we'll put stuff just in general about the Institute. At the bottom, you can click to get materials from previous events. So we're going to work on making sure all the materials are available on this materials page, and making, we're going to be renaming some of these presentations so you're clear who it is and what it's about. But that's where you can start finding materials. Now, what we're also going to be doing is we're going to be adding private membership-only sections for classmates of the Health Equity Leadership Institute of 2014. So you guys are in the inaugural class of 2014. And we will have a membership-only area where you will be able to have more private discussions with each other, questions, and get feedback. So once we get you all, we're going to have to get you all kind of registered and logged in. I mean, registered, and we'll have so we'll be working with you and getting that set up. So so you'll have that place for communication as well. So that's what we wanted you to know. For now, you'll find materials posted over here, and then that way anyone can access it. So with that, we want to move to the open space next steps discussion. So I'm going to give it.
And Will, before you do, I just wanted to comment as well that, and I'm just repeating in some ways what you just said, but what you'll also find, I don't know if we'll be able to do it as late as today, but probably by Monday. Will can let me know if that's not reasonable. But that we would then load where you see HELI kickoff and regional meetings, where we'd load, webinar number 1, and then all the information that's connected to this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The other thing, Will, I think you were going to say something about the column to the right, the video, the upcoming events, that information, in terms of that being more general to help.
Oh, yeah. So these are general pages on the website right now with general information on it. You're going to get into the login area. You're going to have a more private area. So the events that will show up in the private area will be HELI Institute, HELI 2014 events. So right now, just remember, this is the public area. So these are videos that we have on all our pages of the website and events that are on all the pages of the website. But when you get into the private class area, then it will be different. It won't look exactly the same. You'll have events that will say HELI events, so it'll be clear. But just don't get confused right now when you're on these more public pages that the upcoming events and the videos are not about Health Equity Leadership Institute. They're just general.
And then I just wanted you to also, if you could, maybe spend a minute or two just on the general California Health Equity website so folks can see the other resources that are there too. This is
yes,
just
of course. Just quickly, this is a relatively new site that we've been working on to help promote health equity. We're focusing on whole health, but certainly we come from a mental health perspective. But we're open to things, putting things here that relate to health in general, health equity and health. But our angle will always be a little more from a mental health side because that's our expertise. But we want to have a place where people can have a discussion and access to resources. So you'll find there'll be a place where we can feature practices, and we invite people to submit additional resources to us, an outline of some key strategies for reducing disparities that have been found. These are pulled out of the Institute of Medicine, just kind of summarizing what these key strategies are for reducing disparities. We'll have resources, more and more resources around measuring and tracking disparities. So all of this might be helpful for you in your institute, in your project, initiative, that you might be working on. Anything that we specifically want to bring to you, we will bring to you formally through the Institute, but there might be some additional things in here that you might find useful. Under training resources, we try to link to webinars and video trainings or other trainings that are available. So, and then the Institute, and then additional other resources that come up that don't fit under the other categories. I think someone mentioned the waiting room. the kickoff, and so you see we've added it here as a resource. So you can also recommend resources for us to add. The best way we want to have like communication more engaging is by having this blog. So we would certainly want to be blogging about the Health Equity Leadership Institute. If anyone wants to submit something, please do. Those are the key things. We also have a couple products that we have available that you might be interested in terms of videos. So those are the things that we have on the website, and then you can connect to our California Health Equity, our Twitter feed, though it looked like we didn't have a lot of people who were Twitterati at our kickoff, but we have some YouTube videos and from some other events that we've had, and Flickr and Facebook. So hopefully this will create something that will be an additional support for you as well. And we continue to add materials, and we hope it will get more and more useful to folks. So if you have any feedback, any requests, any recommendations, or anything you want us to post on there, let us know. So with that, we'll move to the next steps, the follow-up and next steps, right? So pass it on to Steve.
Yes. Just audio, no video for this one. So mainly an advertisement for our open space. We had a wonderful opportunity to see how it might work for a very short open space during the HELI kickoff, and the notes for that are ready. I think I have a couple edits that I have to make, and then we'll send them out to everybody. But it includes the commitments, what the different sessions were, what people brainstormed during their sessions. Of course, we only had about an hour and a half or so together, so it was very brief. So we realized that many of you may have already Googled and looked at what open space is and found tons of resources on it, but we want to offer an hour webinar to really go into the process of it, not practice like we did at HELI Kickoff, but actually the steps, what are some important things to consider, and then be available for questions and answers about the process. So that's planned for the following Friday from 10 to 11, and there'll be more information about that in terms of getting access to that webinar. Some of you, I think, may already receive the go-to webinar information, but it's next Friday from 10 to 11. And we'll go through the details of creating an invitation, how do you get the diverse groups there, the nuts and bolts of actually making it work and what make it work better or not as well sometimes. So this is where it's your chance to ask questions and get some information before you launch into your open space.
And that's an optional, just to clarify, that's an optional webinar that we're making available for those people who are interested in doing or running the open space. And it's also going to be recorded and put online, so if you can't make it, you'll still have access to that information.
Yeah, totally. It is optional. My feelings might be hurt a little bit if no one shows up, but we will record it. And even if you can't make it, I think if you decide to launch an open space afterwards, for some reason, obviously myself and others will be available to help and answer questions, so this isn't the only time. But we figured some of you may want to get going on it, so having a webinar on the nuts and bolts of it, the more details will probably help, but definitely optional.
Okay. Is there anything else, just Steve, related to open space that you wanted to share at this point, or any follow-up from our process together at the kickoff?
I think when we send out the notes, probably the most important thing is all of you made commitments. I'd probably look at your commitments, but then also look at some other people's commitments, especially if they're within your HELI team, because that's something that may actually help you with your action steps and your action planning. And then you may also want to browse commitments from people in other HELI teams and see what they were doing. There's some great ideas in there. So that's probably the one thing, if once you do get those notes, I encourage you to really look at not just your own commitments and your teams, but everyone's, and get some ideas of what to include in your action plans.
Yeah, I'm curious if people have been able to move or make steps on some of the actions and the commitments that they've made. I know I have. So I hope others have as well in terms of following through. Okay, so we'll get that information posted on the website as well, and as Steve just mentioned, want to encourage you to If you haven't followed through on your action steps, to do that, and then, like he mentioned, really being able to take a look at what others are doing and offering, and seeing how it fits with your intentions for your initiatives. We recognize that not the topic that we focused on wasn't specific to your aim or the initiative that your county team may be establishing, and yet for some of you it may be very connected. So, okay. All right, well, we are at the point now where I'd like to talk a little bit about next steps, and then really spend the last few minutes after that if there is more discussion and dialogue, although it's been, I think, a little challenging to do that with people raising hands and that kind of thing. But I wanted to just spend the last few minutes at least just talking about kind of next steps and what's happening from here. And some of it we've kind of been introducing all along. For some reason I can't get slides to advance. So what's happening next? Will was saying earlier that we've provided you at the kickoff, at regional meetings, today with a lot of information about different things that we'd like for you to consider and think about as you move forward, together collectively on this process that we're working on with HELI. And that there are a couple ways, of course, that we want to support you. And the one that we were just talking about was an optional webinar that we are offering that Steve's going to lead next Friday on open space. And so we'll send you, again, this information and the link, and you'll have it on the PowerPoint as well. But do want to invite you right now that if that's something, I think Tri-City said that you all are intending to kind of use this as a process, and if others are at least thinking about that, you may want to sit in on this or have at least a team member or someone potentially participate or look at the recording, listen to the recording later. The other thing is we're going to offer an optional PDSA, the Making Use of Continuous Quality Improvement webinar that Will is going to offer on Friday, July 19th. And again, the idea is he gave us an introduction during the kickoff, but being able to get a little bit more in depth, being able to respond to specific questions about that as you're thinking about your initiatives and what it is that you want to accomplish, that will provide another opportunity just to support you in your efforts. So those are two kind of optional webinars, if you will, that we're offering. Part of what we provided with you on at the kickoff was the other more formal webinars where we really want and expect that everybody can participate as much as possible. But these are others that are offered to support your process. I'm having a hard time advancing again. All right. So the next official, however, team webinar, the second webinar for HELI that's officially scheduled is Friday, August 16th from 10 to 12. Again, we'll send the link and the information related to that, but our intention at that point is to help and hope that you will have solidified your action plan and then help with the continued development of your evaluation plan. So in between now and August, we have a few things that we'd like you to do in order to be kind of prepared for that next webinar that we'll have together. And so, there may be some things that you individually with your teams know that you need to do, and whether that's, formalizing your team and still figuring out when you're going to have your meetings and that kind of thing. But in addition to that, these are some things that we wanted to suggest and offer and have you think about and be aware of in terms of being prepared for our next webinar on the 16th of August. So one is to complete a community readiness tool. And that is what Steve was introducing you to just a little bit ago. I thought I might have been able to pull it up while we're actually looking at this webinar, but I can't quite figure out how to do that, so I'm just going to ask you to refer to your memory banks and then to the actual document once you see it on the web. But the idea, and Will actually I think talked about it a little bit more in depth, but is to assess within your community, within the population that you are wanting to be targeting for your initiative, to begin to really ask questions and understand, are they ready and invested in doing this particular work, and will they be and can they be engaged with you in that process. You'll see there it lists team lead and parens, and that's one suggestion. There's lots of roles. There's plenty to be done as it relates to this initiative and to this work. And so, again, collectively, you all can decide what roles people want to take. But one idea may be to have the lead or the leads take the lead, if you will, in beginning that process or brainstorming how you all want to do that. The other thing is, we've been talking all along as well in terms of solidifying your aims and objectives, and again, getting the community involved in that process of doing that. And so we, again, encourage you to continue that process, to think about how you want to do that. And again, is that going to involve open space as an option for you? Will it involve maybe doing a focus group or some kind of hybrid of methods that work for you and for the community that you're wanting to address? But in terms of aims and objectives, a couple of things that we want you to be thinking about is, of course, your aim, the specific objectives that you have, the community assessment, readiness assessment that we're talking about, and also the action plan and the evaluation kind of plan and process. And, we mentioned earlier, as we've been talking about HELI and kind of what's happening in next steps and what's scheduled for us, that we're going to be doing site visits. And we had some conversation even at the kickoff about what those might look like, and how to get leadership involved and that kind of thing. And what we'd really like to do is invite you all kind of to develop. We're going to give you a template for a PowerPoint that's kind of basic, but covers this information in terms of the team initiative, what are your aims and objectives, what information you may have gotten related to your community readiness assessment, and then based on all of that, kind of what your plan is, all the information that Steve began to talk about in terms of your steps and your action plan, and then also what your evaluation plan will be and look like. And our hope and our intention is that when we come to do our site visits with you, that we would invite you actually to use this template of a PowerPoint to document some of this information so that we can kind of support you in that and framing that, but also we would like for you all to present this information, as leaders in doing this work with your leadership, and with us kind of present, so that they can be up to date and up to speed about what it is that you're doing, why it is that you're doing it. We want each kind of team member to kind of take on a particular piece and a role so that you have an opportunity to kind of present. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth moving forward, but did want to bring this to you as an opportunity for how to continue to engage leadership and management and to build leadership skills along the way. So we do need for you to continue working on your aims and objectives, and to think about plugging in some of this information in a PowerPoint that would summarize some of it. We also are inviting you to begin your action planning process. So you have a couple of examples of worksheets that Steve has covered this morning, and we'll make those available to you. But you are also welcome, if there are particular models of planning processes that you have that work for you, to use those instead. But to begin that process of thinking, once you're clearer about your specific initiative, what your steps are. You also have a data resources checklist that was provided to you as well. And so, again, our encouragement between now and thinking about August 16th, thinking about the site visits that we hope to have in the weeks following that, beginning to think about where's the data, or where are we gathering data from, what are the resources that we are accessing, and gathering that information as well. And then the team process documentation, the checklist, the journaling, that idea of thinking of how you want to monitor the progress that you're making. So these are the things in terms of thinking of what we want you to keep on your radar, what we want you to be continuing to work together on as a team. So it's the community readiness process, aims and objectives, getting your action plan and steps in order, beginning to think about what data and resources that you want and need to begin to gather, and then kind of what your process will be for documenting what you're doing and how you're doing it. In terms of scheduling, there's a few things that need to still happen. We've talked already quite a bit about on-site TA visits and site visits, and we'd like to schedule them kind of as half days, and ideally these are some of the dates and times that we have in mind, imagining that they would be half days approximately that we'd want to spend in the morning or an afternoon time, and using that, I think it's the third week of August, the 22nd or 23rd, we'd like to travel to Merced or San Francisco, and then looking at the 27th, 28th, and 29th in terms of making it more to the Southern California region. So as you all continue to meet and connect with each other, we want you to think about and connect with each other about those dates and times and which might work for you and for your team, where might be the best place to meet. It may be at you've got a CBO that's working with your team, maybe it would be ideal to meet there. Maybe ideal to be at the county office so that leadership is there. But we need to get some feedback from you all about what dates work for you. And as you can tell, ideally we'd like to kind of do them all at the same time so that we're kind of traveling and can coordinate that as best as we can. So we need to schedule those, and then we need to also, we talked about having just supportive calls for the leads once a month, just to check in with each other to kind of see where things are going and how the team is moving forward. And so those still need to get established. I wanted to just clarify that the leads, from at least my last understanding for the counties, are what is listed here, and if that's any different, please let me know. But we'll probably generate a doodle poll or a process to, if you guys know what that is, a scheduling tool, to think about when is a good time for us to do that. And then the last thing is, yeah, that is it at this point. I see that we have not very much time left. But did want to spend a few minutes at least kind of opening it up, seeing if there are questions, are there comments, are there things that you want additional clarification about at this point in time. And then I also want to just remind you as well that we are accessible by phone and email, and if we are not able to get to all of your questions today or if things come up, afterwards, feel free to reach out to any of us. But I'm interested in knowing, with everything that we've covered in the past couple of hours, are there questions? Any hands coming up? Seeing any at this point. Okay, see some hands, thank you. Janice, I'm going to unmute you.
First of all, I really want to thank the team for doing the first webinar. And it's a little overwhelming still, but it's getting a little more. And I'm very excited that the web page is up and that the resources that we need will be there for us. And I'm hopeful that the next couple of weeks our team can meet and make progress individually, so when we do meet in August, we'll be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, thank you for offering it to us, especially the support.
Absolutely. Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
Phil, you have your hand up. I'm going to unmute you too. Okay. Can you?
Question on, yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Question about the meeting for the August 28th.
Yes.
Is that for Merced in San Francisco? Is that going to be a meeting together, or are we talking separate meeting there?
Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, those would be separate meetings. So we'll meet with each team individually.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And that's all I have. Yes.
Okay. I'll mute you back then. Any other questions, comments, feedback from participants or from the team? All right, well, I am not hearing any other comments. I'm not seeing any other raised hands. I'm seeing that we have about 3 minutes left, so maybe folks are ready to get to lunch. So my last reminders, and then we can just wrap this up for today, is next Friday is the open space webinar, optional webinar if you are interested in that. So just kind of hold that 10 o'clock hour if that is an option for you. And then the other is to please continue moving forward on the various kind of action items that we've encouraged you to do. And get together with your team. It seems like that's some of the most important things that each of you might need to do to move forward on next steps. And then reach out if you do need additional support. I know we just talked about with Santa Barbara that it might be helpful to do a conference call with your team. With LA as well. Sandra, we can talk about that as an option after you all meet, maybe on Tuesday. But whatever we can do to kind of support you in your efforts, we want to be able to do. And appreciate, again, you taking your time and your passion and your commitment to do this. We wouldn't be able to do this and make these changes without all of us making this commitment. So appreciate that. Okay, Christina, Will, Steve, last opportunity. Any comments from you all?
Best wishes to everybody.
Okay.
Yep, same here. And again, don't be I know it might be overwhelming, but don't feel overwhelmed because really we will work with you around any concern you have, any question you have, any challenge you have. We're available. So think of this as things that we're offering you to support your being effective leaders in achieving health equity. So start from there, and everything else we'll take care of. So we'll work with you.
The other thing, too, this is Christy, I wanted to remind us all is that there's lots of expertise on the call and on the teams. How many years of experience did we have collectively? 200 and something? So, of course, please access us and the consultants and all of that related to this, but please know and share and work with each other as well. I know that there was cards being passed and emails exchanged at the kickoff and resources shared at that point, and so the idea is to continue that process as well.
And we can send out, again, we have another updated list of all of the participants in HELI.
Correct, and apologize too, you'll probably get a few of those once we get the LA team kind of solidified and to Barbara as well, solidified with their specific membership. And we're not posting that information obviously on the web since it's more private. So we'll send a more updated one, but just apologize that just noting that you'll get additional ones as well. Okay, well, I think we are done and complete, and so we will disconnect at this point. We will meet again on the 16th of August at 10 a.m. If not sooner, should you choose to be on the PDSA optional webinar on July 19th, or should you be on the webinar next week for open space, or we have additional contact before then. So thank you guys. Take care. Have a great weekend.